This is a replay of Let's Talk Nigeria on Sparkling 92.3 FM Calabar, making Nigeria better, one conversation at a time.
We talk everything. Health, education, finance, sports, transportation, agriculture, politics,
entertainment,
people and power on Let's Talk Nigeria. Let's Talk Nigeria. Every day of the week from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Only on Sparkling 92.3 FM Calabar. Your radio, your charm.
Hello, welcome. It's time for Let's Talk Nigeria. Sparkling 92.3 FM Calabar, Cross River State, Nigeria. Today we have yet another interesting conversation to have, and this particular conversation started yesterday. Yesterday at the commencement of the public hearing on the 4 reform tax bills, the Senate President said something really striking. He said 30%, only 30% of Nigerians pay taxes. And when he made that statement, he went on to say, if only 30% of Nigerians are paying taxes, why then will you demand 400% of infrastructure development in terms of road network and all of that? And that is what we want to have as a conversation today. Is that the truth? Is he actually telling Nigerians the truth? What is the true situation of things in Nigeria? Is only 30% of Nigerians, or are only 30% of Nigerians paying taxes? And what happens to the rest of the 70? That's the conversation that we are having this morning. And very soon we'll be joined by our guest, Richard Inoyo, who happens to be the country director, Citizen Solution Network. And when he comes on board, let's get to that conversation. I recall having, a very short or brief conversation with him yesterday. And then he was saying, why would the Senate President say that when just by having to, subscribe your data or make a call, you are paying a huge sum, or maybe paying something which doesn't that amount to you paying taxes? But when we have Richard Inoyo on board, then we'll get to look at all of those intricacies this morning. But by the way, we started this conversation tomorrow, and we still want to hear what you have to say about it. What do you make of the comment from the Senate President? Do you find it as being the true state of things in Nigeria, or do you have something contrary to say about that statement that he made yesterday? Let's start off with that before we have our guest join us this morning. 0812-723-7060 or 0809-230-0022. These are the numbers for you to call this morning. We're having a bit of a network challenge, but you can send your comment, your contribution as a text message, or please do well to drop your comment and message on WhatsApp, and we will definitely receive all of that. Hello, good morning to you. Hello? Hello? Okay, you may have to call us back. UB Furniture, I guess you're the one on the line. You may have to call us back this morning. 0812-723-7060 or 0809-230-0022. These are the numbers for you to call this morning. Just a bit of a network challenge there, but all the same, do not give up. Keep trying until you get through to us this morning. But very soon, we'll be joined by Richard Inoyo to have this all-important conversation. So I remember that on Sparkling FM, for the last couple of weeks, we've been having a conversation regarding taxes, and we say that taxes are really vital for developmental strides to happen in the nation. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Kamaka.
Yes, good morning to you, UB Furniture.
Okay. The conversation this morning, I disagree with the Senate President. Last week, I've been last 2 weeks. I traveled to my village. From Calabar till I get to my village, I know how many road safety that I meet on the road. I know how many police that I meet on the road that the driver was giving money up and down. I don't know. The money that you give to road safety on the road and the money that you give to police and the money that you give to army, is it tax or you are just dashing there or you are paying offering? Even if you go to market, the people that is pushing wheelbarrow, they are buy tickets. And the people that is selling small market, they are buy tickets. Is it tax that they are paying or those one is collection? I don't really understand the statement from Senate President that it's only 30% people in Nigeria that is paying tax. I disagree with him. Please, if you don't know what he said sometimes, you should leave us alone so that we can continue our pay. Thank you very much.
Hello,
thank you,
good morning.
for your take on the matter.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning to you.
Yes, this is Emeka from Federal Housing.
Okay, Nemeka, go ahead.
Yes, I've seen a president telling us that only 30% of Nigerians are paying tax. I don't know whether he has the facts to this information that he's giving us, or maybe he's just alleging. Then if it is an allegation, then it's an indictment on FIRS, who should be in the position of knowing those who are actually paying tax and those who are not paying tax. But I want to put one thing clear, because majority of Nigerians actually pay tax without knowing that they are paying tax. So if he's saying that we are not paying tax, then maybe he need to clarify the type of tax he's talking about. Then the class of people who are in that class. He himself, does he pay his own tax? These are the things that he need to let us know as Nigerians. Because I know when we buy ordinary alcohol drinks, they are taxed to it. When we go to supermarket to buy items, they are taxed in it.
Okay,
we are paying it indirectly.
As much as you're trying to make your point, please, we do not in any way promote alcoholic drinks.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. Yes,
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
All right, but all the same, thank you for your contribution this morning. And the question about whether the Senate President pays his taxes, he should be the one to tell us that. But and while we try to connect with our guest this morning, recall that the Senate has been deliberating on the 4 tax reform bills, and the public hearing commenced, I think that was today's Wednesday, that was on Monday. So we have this 4 tax bills. You have the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, you have Nigeria Tax Administration Bill 2024, and then you also have Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill 2024 and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill 2024. Now, these bills rather were presented to the president by the president last year's October, and that's what the Senate is currently considering as we speak right now. Sini, you are a Nigerian. Do you fall within the category of the 30% of Nigerians that pay their taxes?
Okay, so first of all, I pay my taxes, and today's not the first day that we're deliberating this. And the contention on what Mr. Senate President said yesterday, some argued that it was not well informed, because if you get to check the number of individuals we have in Nigeria as civil servants and their taxes being deducted directly from their pay, one will argue that Mr. Senate President's comments is not well informed. Apart from that, looking at the myriads of taxes that Nigerians get to pay almost on an everyday basis, there's the VAT, there's the payee, there's a whole lot of those taxes.
And someone
on the
mentioned
side.
consumption tax yesterday.
Yeah, one of the callers that called us in yesterday. I wonder what consumption tax is all about and where. See, the thing about it is, as 9-to-5ers, as monthly earners, we have a projection for whatever income that we will be getting. So if you are springing up with more of these taxes, there's a way that it takes a toll on our finance, takes a toll on our livelihood, and also our planning and projection. So for what Mr. President or Senate President has said, it is something we'd have to look into and deliberate properly. Where is he coming from? His statement, how factual are they? And if they are not, how do we ensure that an individual occupying such a prestigious position in Nigeria shouldn't go out making uninformed information?
All right, 0812-723-7060 or 0809-230-0022. Apologies, we have a bit of a network challenge, and that's why we're yet to have our guests talk this morning. Hello, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ukamaka and Sydney Williams.
Good morning to you, Mr. Tony.
Yes.
Yes. You see, from a professional point of view, I want to agree with the Senate President to an extent.
Okay.
Yes, I have said it before that in Nigeria, a very little percentage of people pay taxes, particularly those who are in the organized sector, whether private or public. Those are the people we know they pay taxes. We seem to be mixing up the issue of taxes and levies. People use them interchangeably at times. But taxes are involuntary in that its compliance is compulsory, but is not intended to be punitive. You see? So once you are a worker, once you are in a paid employment, whether you like it or not, you will pay taxes. Now, a levy is a legal seizure of your property to satisfy a tax debt. That is what a levy is. So yes. So and if you go to the market and you see in the motor park, for example, you see people giving tickets. Those are levies. Those are not taxes. But whether you like it or not, you are satisfying a tax debt. You ought to pay tax, but you are not paying, and so for this, whatever service you are providing, you are asked you are levied to pay a particular sum of money. Now, let me give you an example to a large extent why I agree with the Senate President. Okay. You see, let us take the people we call politicians today who are holding public offices. You know that one of the requirements is that you will present a tax clearance certificate for 3 years or thereabout. Now, if you do a background check of the people who hold public offices today in Nigeria, more than 3/4 didn't have a paid employment, were not in the organized sector where they were paying taxes. But if you ask them today for tax clearance, they have. How do they have those tax clearances? It's because in Nigeria, anything can happen. All you need to do is to go to the Internal Revenue Service, strike a deal with somebody, and they will write a tax clearance certificate for you. Meanwhile, a tax clearance certificate is different from a tax receipt. Tax receipt is money you have paid. You are seen to have paid for taxes. A tax clearance certificate is a document that shows that you have been paying taxes for so many years. Whether it is true or false, nobody can say.
Yes, Mr. Tony, thank you so much for the wealth of information you've shared this morning. You've been able to, give a distinction between taxes, levies, and I know that on Sparkling FM for the last couple of weeks, we have been, educating people on what taxes are, levies are, and why they need to pay taxes and all of that. So basically what we've been talking about is the statement made by the Senate President yesterday, where he said that less than 30% of Nigerians pay taxes. And I'm going to quote him. He said, this is part of the ways we can diversify our economy by making sure that we get it right. I don't think at this moment that up to 30% of Nigerians pay taxes, and yet 100% of Nigerians want good roads. Okay, so while we try to connect with other guests, and we quickly had to draw Dr. Ejah into the studio to come have a say on this really pertinent issue. Dr. Ejah.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning to you.
It's unfortunate that sometimes people in leadership position make statements without facts and evidence. When he says less than 30% of Nigerians pay tax, where do we have the statistics from? Where's the statistics from? You don't just sit down and begin to make assumptions and begin to make blanket statements. Sometimes the Senate President forgets that he's the Senate President. The statements he makes sometimes translates into policy statements. Okay. And you can't make that kind of statement. I think he owes Nigerians apology. He can't make that kind of statement. And he's telling me 100% of Nigerians demand good roads. What is governance meant for? Why would we not demand good roads? But we're not even talking about good roads. We are saying they should cut down by over 90% what they're earning. That's it. So the money that they're earning, if you cut it down and they earn as federal permanent secretaries, and is enough to do roads in Nigeria. You're talking about taxes when the wage that the people are having is not even a living wage. 30%, less than 30% of Nigerians pay taxes. The population of the civil service, the public service in Nigeria, both private sector and public sector put together, what percentage of that is
it makes
Nigeria?
a 90% of the workforce.
They pay taxes, you collect the taxes upfront from them. And so when you say less than 30% of 67% of Nigerians are multidimensionally poor, it should stop insulting our collective sensibilities by telling us that less than 30% of Nigerians pay tax. Does he understand the poverty index? And even that, the woman who is selling on the road and is carrying a tray of food, of an item that is not even up to 2,000 naira, they collect tickets and collect everything. Is that not a form of taxation? So anything
they say they are levies.
So what is levy? What is levy?
And then Mr. Senate President making such utterances, Dr. Mark, in his position as the Senate President, should he be making such utterances that Nigerians can, as of this moment, confirm that that statement don't have facts in them?
That's why I'm saying that sometimes he doesn't seem to understand the position he holds and the utterances he makes. He should not be speaking at the spur of the moment. Look at the issues between him and Natasha. So look at all these kind of things. You don't make those kind of statements. I feel pain. They are seriously disconnected from the realities on ground.
Where can we ask that this particular statement stemmed from? Would it be due to his immediate environment and people?
It's not about immediate environment. It's clearly about a set of persons who are disconnected from the reality and who are disconnected from their persons.
Okay. All right, thank you so far, Dr. Ejah. We have joined us Richard Inoyo. Richard, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I think the network has been really unstable this morning. Okay. So, yes, talking about the statement made by the Senate President where he said less than 30% of Nigerians pay taxes, and yet 100% of Nigerians want good roads. We started that conversation yesterday, and you made striking statements. Please, let's hear your thoughts on this matter.
Well, first, the Senate President is wrong, okay? The Senate President is wrong. That's the truth. Companies, why am I saying this? Because first, companies don't pay tax in the real sense. Companies don't pay tax. Companies basically are tax collectors. They are tax agents. They collect tax from the end users, you and I, in the real sense of it. Let me tell you what that means. When I go to a company to buy something from any company, they charge me 7.5% on VAT. Okay, so if I'm paying, let's say, 100 naira for the product, I'm told to pay 107 naira 50 kobo. The 7 naira 50 kobo is taken, okay, as tax from me. What the company tends to do is just to gather that money. If it's up to 25 million for a year, they send the money down to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. So in the real sense, companies are tax collectors. They don't naturally pay tax, except where, in the case where they themselves are users of products. So if they go to buy something, that is when they pay tax. But on the overall, all Nigerians are as in taxpayers in the real sense, from the boy in primary school to the woman in the university to everyone buying things in the market. We are all taxpayers. So I think the Senate President owe all Nigeria apology. And if not for anything, I expect him to retract that statement, because the statement was actually made from the angle of not being informed, because we all are taxpayers. In fact, just a few days ago, I ordered for a checkbook for my bank. And that checkbook was about 3,000 naira. I was forced to pay tax of over 200 naira, which is the 7.5% equivalent for the service as in the bank would render to me. It's the same thing across board. When you go to the local mall and you buy products, there's always a tax inclusion to it. So we're all taxpayers. So I think he's getting it wrong from the angle of talking about personal income tax, which in the real sense is a question of where you work and what arrangements has been put in place either by the state or by the federal government to collect tax. But on the overall, Nigerians, the taxpayers, from the angle of the VAT tax portfolio.
All right, thank you very much, Richard Inoyo. Dr. Ejah had a thought to share while you were speaking. Dr. Ejah,
I agree with Richard completely, because you look at, even now, check every transaction you do on the financial platform. You're transferring money from any of your platforms like OPay and other. They charge you 50 naira. You go to it's still commercial value. You transfer, they pay you. They charge you money. You go and withdraw from the POS, they charge you money. You try from the ATM, they charge you money. So when he says people do not pay tax, I begin to wonder. I feel so pain, and that's because of them. If people don't pay tax, the real people who don't pay tax are themselves. They only pay tax when it's time for election. That's when they begin to go and do tax clearance. So check now, when it's time for elections, all of them will begin to go and collect 3 years tax clearance and all that stuff like that. Because if you've been paying taxes, you should be able to put it all together. So I think I cannot make that kind of statement. It shows clearly how the person who have entrusted with leadership of the highest legislative chambers in this country, how he's seriously disconnected with the reality of times.
All right, Richard, you're still there, right?
Yeah, I'm still with you.
Okay, aside from what the Senate President said, which has elicited a flurry of reactions, also the 4 tax reform bills that are presented before them, which the public hearing started on Monday, Nigerians are also reacting to that. And what do you make of them? We have the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, we have the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, we have the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and then the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill.
Okay, well, I didn't really get your question well, but I want to believe that you're asking what do I think about the tax bill, the 4?
Yes.
On the floor of the National Assembly. Okay. Well, first, I have a problem with the attempt by the president to basically drive, because basically they call it the Presidential Tax Reform Committee. They are just basically working on the president. I don't have issue with any attempt by the president to try to reform the tax system. Okay, if we're talking about multiple taxation. But you see, all the claims they made, in the real sense, in that so-called arguments, they are already extant here. Okay, we already have everything they said they want to do with the tax reform is already happening already, even before the tax reform. That has been the central position. But what this tax reform wants to do is now to impose a tax on exports of other products out of this country, except as in crude oil or petroleum. That simply means the big boys who are in the oil industry will not have to pay tax if they are dealing in crude oil or petroleum exports, you see? But then they're asking every other person to pay tax. Then we have the free trade zone, which was supposed to drive the economic objective of the country from the angle of making them tax exempt. That way you can go to the free trade zone and then run your business. You don't have to pay tax because there's tax waiver in that economic zone. Right now they are trying to include them into the tax nets and to force them to pay tax, which simply means will not be competitive when it comes to our ability to not only just produce but to also to export. Then there's an attempt to increase the tax itself, as in from the current 7.5% to over about 25%. And we're saying that is totally unacceptable, because where you want to tax people to growth, you end up destroying the economy. Where there's as in what I call charge on tax, what that simply means that investors will go to other countries where they have lesser charge. And that's not just it alone. It's also increased the cost of production. We're already battling with increase in the cost of production in this country. And tax won't just for that kind of, as in, worsen the situation. That's that. Then if you also read through the tax, the various tax bills, there's one specifically that basically talks about the plan of the government to invest in the educational sector from the angle of the TED fund. That simply means by 2030, you won't have any money going to the TED fund. What you now have is that the money will be going to the student loan. Now the question is that do we really need student loan? We don't. Okay? But I attempt by the government now to basically force people to actually go into getting loans to school is just totally wrong. I know of several countries in the world where you can actually score up to your PhD level without paying school fee. Finland is one of them, and these countries are the ones doing well internationally, not only just from the angle of intellectual property contribution to global as a knowledge base, but also from the angle of also strengthening the economy from human capital development, exporting their intellectuality to the rest of the world. Now, any attempt to basically scrap the TED fund, which is Tertiary Educational Trust Fund, what that simply means is that you will not be able to have development in the university from the angle of the TED fund anymore. If you go to several schools across the country, you see the TED fund building. Those were buildings that came up because of the TED fund. Outside that, the TED fund is also very critical to research, to publication. Not only just that, also for training and exchange program. TED fund basically fund those programs. Now, the argument they're putting forward is that the VCs and co basically divert the money. That's not really true. Because if you look at the TED fund committee, it's one of the strongest in the country. You have the Minister of Finance, you have the Minister of Education, then you have some very important eminent as in office holders in that area. Most importantly, when you claim there's corruption in the system, go after those who are corrupt, but don't destroy the system. That is our position. So we're saying that the attempt by the government to invest the TED fund and push all that money by 2030 to the student loan is totally fraudulent and unacceptable. And Nigerians must come together to resist it. The good thing here is that I was the first Nigerian that brought this to the fore. And today I'm seeing a lot of lecturers, I'm seeing even civil society organizations across the country throwing that path to call for an end to that attempt by the government to invest in the TED fund. Nigerians must learn to resist that policy. But just like I said, increase in tax will not do us any well. Attempt to basically force the free trade zone to start paying tax is not acceptable because that also increases the cost of production. And I think we just need to look out for all the wrong things included in the so-called bills we have in the floor of the National Assembly and fight for ways to get them expunged. Because if we don't, we all suffer for this.
All right. Thank you so far, Richard. Thank you very much. But right about now, we need to take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue with this interesting conversation and also make room for other people to share their thoughts. We have a lot of calls coming in. This is Let's Talk Nigeria. We'll be right back.
Number one. Music, sports, and talk radio. Let it hit on.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Sparkling 92.3 FM.
This is a replay of Let's Talk Nigeria on Sparkling 92.3 FM Calabar. Making Nigeria better, one conversation at a time.
We talk everything. Health, education, finance, sports, transportation, agriculture, politics,
entertainment,
people and power. On Let's Talk Nigeria. Let's Talk Nigeria. Every day of the week from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Only on Sparkling 92.3 FM Calabar. Your radio, your charm.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. And it's still Let's Talk Nigeria on the Sparkling Morning Show. And still sparkling this morning. We have had Richard Inoyo talk about this, and also Dr. Ejah, share their thoughts on the 4 tax reform bills, and also the statement made by the Senate President where he said that less than 30% of Nigerians actually pay taxes, and then 100% of Nigerians are asking for good infrastructure, good roads. But we like to hear from you as we continue with this conversation this morning. The numbers are 0812-723-7060 or 009-230-0022. And then Richard Inoyo was able to share his thoughts on what he thinks about the bills that have been introduced and also up for deliberation on the floor of the National Assembly. On Monday, the public hearing started, and from the story that we have here present at that public hearing, you have a major northern group, Arewa think tank, and you also had the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Dun present. You also had the Chief Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mele Kyari. He was present at that public hearing. You also had the Federal Inland Revenue Service Chairman, Zacchaeus Adedeji was present at the hearing, and also the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Chairman Taiwo Oyedele. And also you had the Nigerian Customs Service were represented, and also the Nigerian Bar Association. The former President Yakubu was also there, and all the stakeholders. And the question I asked was, the people that were there, do they actually represent the minds of all Nigerians? Richard, thank you. Welcome back. Richard, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you. Now, you were saying something really vital before we went on that short break. You were trying to speak on all the bills that have been presented, the demerits that you see in them. Now, don't you see any merits in these bills?
Well, I don't really know where to start from. The question is that what exactly does the bill intend to achieve? They're talking about the unification of the tax as a projects of the government. I've not really seen specific thing that you can actually point to that bill to say the bill wants to kind of address. And that's why some of us will begin to think that even though on the surface it looks as if government policies are designed to solve problems, some of us have come to observe that they are designed to basically create new problems. Because, for instance, why would anybody want to drag the TED fund down? Why? If you look at some of the buses that run interstate from schools to schools, they're actually funded by the TED fund. If you go down to even the school closest to you where you are right now in Crossover State, being Unical, some of the buildings across board are actually products of TED fund. Same way some persons actually earn their PhD as in degree courtesy of TED fund. So why would anybody want to go after that and force everybody to become loan as in what I call debtor in the name of trying to be educated? It is the interest of every country to ensure that you educate your people, because that's where intellectual security comes in, which is the foundation for other form of security, where people are informed, they have the knowledge, and they know exactly why they're doing whatever they're doing from the civic as in contribution perspective. So I don't really know a specific thing the bill is trying to. Then we talk about the whole idea of saying that wherever the activities occur, that's where the tax will be paid to. We're saying that even the bill itself is an attempt by the federal government to nationalize as in what I call revenue collection in the country, which is totally wrong. Okay, because we expect the state and local government to be able to actually take this tax. So naturally, there are areas that don't expect the federal government to even want to pass a bill as regard the collection of taxation. Because if you're doing business in Calabar, for instance, and expect your tax to be paid in Calabar, that's true, which the federal government is trying to make the argument. But we're saying that if you're saying that is what you want to do, because you feel that some states will end up having more tax benefits in the name of the fact that they are the largest in the economy, why not you allow a state like Crossover State to run its water resources, run its hydro, as in its hydro endowment? Why now force Crossover State to be subservient to the issue of license for anything as in the state wants to do? The same thing we've seen playing out in the area of mining. For you to mine today in Crossover State, you have to go to the federal government. You have to go to the Ministry of the Mines to get the license to mine, which is wrong. So if you're saying you want to actually nationalize revenue collection from the angle of taxation, we're saying that for us it does not really make sense. What we need to do is to ensure that every state would have the power to kind of run their own economy, and whatever money they generate from that as an economy, they will not be needing tax from the federal government, which is the reason why some governors basically kick against the tax proposal. But as I'm talking to you right now, even without it being passed into law, they start implementing it. And a lot of Nigerians don't know. If you want to find out, go to your bank, make payment for something. They will let you know that the tax that they just deducted from your transaction is being paid to the Crossover State government. So it's clear right now what they're doing. So these are issues we all have with the issue of the tax reform. So no one has been able to point to one single thing they tell us that the tax intends to achieve. Increasing the tax from the current 7.5% to over about 20%, it's totally unacceptable, because that will not do the economy any good. It will only increase the cost of production, which all of us right now, we're already complaining as regard the cost of things in the market. So if before I'm paying 7.5% in tax, and now you're forcing me to pay higher, what do you think I'm going to do if I run a business? I'll transfer that cost, that burden on the end user. So the end user, the customers, citizens in the country will have to pay more to get just few goods. So the question is, what exactly do they intend to achieve with the tax? That's why some of us feel clearly that every area of the economy the government went into, this in the energy market, we saw hike in the price of energy, in the area of tariff, we saw increase in the cost of tariff. The same way we're seeing in the cost of petroleum across board. They went into the so-called monetary market, where they want to actually sanitize them, as in the money markets. What do we end up seeing? We saw the naira being devalued. So everywhere the government ever went into, they just destroyed. So anybody who is thinking that this is going to be an exception,
do you think it's a function of destroying it, or that's their own strategy for trying to make things well? Do you think they go there with the intent to destroy?
I think so. Because we need to speak from the area of data and from the area of historical analysis of policy. Let's not forget, when you look at policy decisions anywhere in the world, there are three things you do when you're appraising policies or when you're recalling or reviewing policy. It's either you continue the policy, what we refer to as policy continuation, if you think the policy is doing well, or you modify the policy if you think there's need for adjustments in policy decision, or you terminate the policy when you think neither that policy should continue or be modified. The truth is that if you look at the policy history of the government in power today, every sector that went in, they destroyed the sector. Just mention one sector they've gone in and they've sanitized the sector. Is it in the energy market, where today we're paying higher amount of money in terms of energy tariff, and yet we don't have the cost of electricity? Is it in the so-called energy market from the angle of petroleum, where they told us that with that they're going to stop borrowing? They still borrow. 30% of our budget is funded by debt.
Okay.
So they are still borrowing, even though the price of the PMX has gone up. So where exactly is it in the money market, where they said they're going to sanitize and make us, as in, float the naira? Where are we today? The exchange rate is over 1,500 naira, okay, per dollar. I was trying to make an international payment recently. I have to pay through my nose. These are the issues we have on board. So the policy history, the data analysis basically show that this government is not actually solving any problem. Rather, every sector that went in, they either destroy that sector or they create new problem for the common man on the streets of the country.
All right, Richard, thank you for your opinions on this matter. We still have Dr. Ejah in the studio. Dr. Ejah, as part of the report that we have emanating from that public hearing, we heard the Senate President saying something, or he questioned why states that host factories that pay VAT should receive little benefit, while corporate headquarters in other regions collect bulk of the taxes. So he's trying to push that states should be able to, who are paying VAT, should also receive bulk benefit instead of receiving little.
Yeah, as good as that intention is, let's stop providing great gifts to people. You're putting it outside, the gift looks fine, but inside there are daggers in the gift. In all these things we're running around in circle, can we truly run a federal system? You call Nigeria Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's my name, but we're not running a federal system. Because if you run a true federal system, the states become confederating units. And the states run the economy. You and I know that the economy of California, which is a state in the United States, is bigger than several West African states put together.
True.
That's true. They have their economic policies is driving based on the things they need for. So let's stop doing this kind of, unintelligent way of trying to deceive people. You're beginning to look at it. We're hiding like ostrich, putting our head inside the sand and leaving the whole body outside. What's in the tax reform that has not been there? What's the real problem with the taxation? The issues clearly, as I'm saying, is that let's begin from where the problem is. The center is getting too much. Allow the federating units to get what they're supposed to get and let them begin to look at it. Harness your resources, use your resources, and let's begin to see a certain percentage of it which will go to the center. And that's a thing that will also apply.
Now, Dr. Ejah, you said something about allowing the federating unit, which being the states, right?
Yes.
But at this public hearing, looking at all the stakeholders that appeared, there is no mention of maybe the Nigerian Governors Forum being present there to speak for themselves, right? If they have been affected with the decision from the center, why are they not speaking for themselves?
When you begin to select people to appear in public hearing, you have already had a decision made. That's the truth about it. How much of the public hearings that are coming up that you see reflected in the things that we have? So these are things that you are doing it to fulfill all righteousness so that it becomes part of it that you had the public hearing. The public hearing you have had. How much of public hearings have been able to change situations that the government has taken on certain things? So I think for me, it's just doing it to fulfill all righteousness. And Nigerians, this is a time we must ask for. Let's not begin. You cannot be repairing something that is beyond repair. Let's go back and begin to look at the document that is keeping us together, which is actually the Constitution. Remember, in this same place, I'd said that the CONFA of 2014 was not a mistake, it was deliberate. If you look at the amalgamation treaty, 1914 to 2014 were 100 years. And he clearly said after 100 years, we're going to review it. 3 options were clear. We like the union, let's continue the way it is. We like the union, but there are some amendments that needs to be done. Or we don't like the union, let everybody go apart. And you see that from people keep saying that the bulk of our problem is from a constitution which is not people-centric. So you want to do tax, you want to do this. Now again, you're looking at, it's saying you want to do tax reform, you want to destroy third fund, you're talking about student loan. Where has that helped us? So we begin to look at it, and I had said from the beginning, we're getting to 2 years. The only thing that can come up from this administration is consistent tax increase.
Of course, the president made it clear that he was going to widen the tax net. Is it
when
the public
you widen
domain?
tax net is different from increasing taxation, taxes. Widening tax nets in terms of collection of tax. So one of the things you do, you identify leakages and multiple taxation. See that you put it together and have people come in. You widening taxation doesn't mean you increase. You and I know that now. Okay, look at the energy subsector, like the power itself when you're having electricity. A few of us intend to go to court on the issue of banding. It doesn't really make sense. Because you say you are in band A, for instance, and you're being charged, your tariff is higher. That's not what it's supposed to be. Relate this thing, the difference between each of the band is the time span of energy. So in band A is expected you should have about 18 to 24 hours or 20 hours energy. The other bands, as it goes down, the hours of availability of energy reduces. So liken this to about 5 vehicles that get to a filling station. One is 100 liters, the other one is 80, 60, 40, and 20 liters. If you go there, all of them are going to buy PMS. The PMS they are buying, the rate is the same. The total amount that we pay will not be that the rate for the vehicle that has 1,000 liters is capacity of tank. The rate is the same like the one buying 20. But the amount they pay is based on the quantity. So you see the kind of fraud within the power subsector. The person who is in band A is having 18 hours. The tariff, the rate of his kilowatt hour, should not be different from the person in band E, because it's the same energy. And so this is the kind of fraud you're beginning. You are saying tax net. What are you saying?
Okay.
So widening tax net is not about increasing taxation.
It's quite unfortunate that I think from what we have here as a report, the lawmakers are seeing things differently from what Nigerians are seeing. But before you continue, I'm going to allow people to have a say again. 0812-723-7060 or 0809-230-0022. These are the numbers for you to call this morning. Now, from what is here before me, still coming from the Senate President, I'm referring this to Richard. Richard, I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. The Senate President, is saying that, in his words, we're not interested in making laws for ourselves. We want to leave what I call enduring legacies for the future. And I also believe strongly that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is quite aware that laws are meant to be obeyed and laws are meant for the good governance of the country. And then he went up to say, in coming up with these reforms, the president is looking at the situation yesterday, looking at the situation today, and looking at the Nigerian future with the way the global trend is going. Now, these people are not seeing what we're seeing. So where do you think the disconnect is coming from, Richard, from your assertion so far?
Okay, let me just quickly point to you as in the part X, the aspect of the bill that has to do with development levy. If you come down to section 59, subsection 28D, let me draw your attention, C and D first. Let me start with the National Information Technology Development Fund. That fund, they want to scrap the fund. By 2027, the fund is gone. Then also the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, that fund by 2027, the fund is gone. All that money is going to student loan. How would this policy assist or help our science or improve our ability to have access to information or improve our research in the information sector? No way. So the truth is that what the senator is doing is just doing whatever he's told to do. And this policy has no connection to the Nigerian as an expectation or wishes. They're just doing whatever they want to do there. Let me tell you something. The first 5 years of the Citizen Solution Network, our focus then was on policy reform. I used to fly down to Abuja, sit at the National Assembly during public hearing, listen to these people come up with very brilliant memorandum with my team, submit it. These guys don't even listen. They just throw all those things away and they do whatever they want to do. So they didn't all talk about public hearing. Basically, they just put it forward to just deceive the Nigerian people. Because those of us who have been active beyond just talking on radio and going down there to sit with these people, we've seen clearly that they don't even care about the public hearing they're actually holding. Because the agenda there is just to do whatever they want to do. That's by the wayside. You cannot rely on the Senate President, Emerge as the Senate President. He's not the highest ranking Senate officers at the time they went into election. Look at the standing order of the Senate rule. It's expected that whosoever is going to contest for the position of the Senate President has to be the highest, as in the oldest, as in senator, as in senator in that House of Assembly. But funny enough, they didn't even care about the rule. They threw the rule away and he emerged courtesy of the influence of the power that be. So that kind of man who somehow believes how he emerged is the question of people who want him. They're not necessarily Nigerian people or not necessarily based on the rule of the Senate. I can't really take such person's word seriously. The truth here is that, just like I said, Nigerians must take their time to educate themselves about the tax bill. They must take time to read everything in it because it's a question of life and death. If you allow this bill to stand, a lot of things will go wrong. In the next 2-3 years, I can tell you, if you want to send your kids to school, to university, you pay through your nose. When I went to university, the fees then was very, very as a low. Right now, I am paying for my words for over about 125,000 naira just for fees and acceptance fee. In some departments, you won't pay higher. We're not talking about textbook and all that kinds of things going on. These are the issues on ground. So anyone who's thinking this tax reform is going to address the problem, the person is just not paying attention to policy history and the data in front of us for the last 9 years. These people, they've solved no problem. I challenge anyone to show me one problem they solve. Is it in the money market where we have crises as regards the value of the naira? Or is it in the energy sector where we're paying higher in terms of tariff? One of the highest in the world. My analysis shows that for you to basically generate 1 kilowatt per hour, what you need is less than 55 as a naira. Yet they're asking us to pay over about 350 as a 15 naira per kilowatt per hour. These are the issues on ground, and it's not helping anybody, and it's destroying the very foundation of our commerce because people will not be able to produce when the cost of production is high, and even when they do produce, what you're going to have at the end of the day is that the cost of that product in the market will be so expensive, and it will be driving inflation, and inflation destroy everyone. So I know clearly that the Senate President is not speaking for Nigerians, but Nigerians cannot also sit in their houses and thinking that these people will just do what Nigerians want. Nigerians must rise and intercept this policy and question this policy. In fact, these days, the policy we have in my organization is we question the answers. Because it's very important to even question as in some of the things they're telling us. Because we know clearly, those of us who have taken the time to read through the tax bills, the 4 of them, we know the danger involved. So there's nothing they want to solve. Honestly, there's nothing in the real sense. Even though they are saying in one breath they want to decentralize the tax system, that states can actually get money, but in another breath they are nationalizing the tax system, which I feel is not very important. Cross-river State is supposed to be taking all the tax going on in cross-river states. So it's not a question of the federal government coming in. Federal government can take tax in Abuja. Okay? The same way I feel that cross-river State is supposed to be taking all of the responsibility as regard mining, the commissioning of all mining as an asset. But unfortunately, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria refused this issue. So the key issue they are supposed to address, they are not addressing it. Right? They're just trying to come up with new policy decisions to hurt the Nigerian people. And it's totally unacceptable. They will argue in future that these are some of the unintended consequences of the policy. But they know the consequences of this policy. That at the end of the day, you go to school. In fact, currently in some universities, you don't have building. Students are basically going to classes in overcrowded environments. And yet you want to basically scrap as in one major fund that basically helps to expound the amount of classes in school, and somehow you're telling us that policy is good. So it is sad. It is just really, really sad. I don't really know how to express my frustration at this policy of the government to basically reform the tax system in a negative direction. And I know clearly the fact that the Kenyans resisted the finance bill, that same finance bill is what we are seeing here in Nigeria today, being pushed around as though it's some solution, when in real sense it's an attempt by the government to invest in social infrastructure.
Okay. All right, Mr. Richard, just this morning on the news we heard that our GDP for quarter quarter 4 of 2024 did well. They said it increased to about 3.6%. And looking at it with the tax reform bills that they are proposing, will this help further to stabilize our economy, or it will just dwindle even further?
Gross domestic products is the total amount of goods, to some extent services rendered within the country in a particular year. Are we saying that over the last 1 year we've had increase in our production capacity? Is that what we're saying? Amidst the rise of cost of transportation, amidst the increase in the cost of production, amidst the fact that a lot of persons are losing their jobs, a lot of companies are closing. You see, I can no longer take the National Bureau of Statistics serious, not the Bureau of Sincerity, because this is the bureau that basically changed the employment as a metrics as regard how we calculate unemployment. Today we know there are more unemployment in this country than ever before. Today we know clearly there are more Nigerians that have been pushed into poverty by this regime than ever in the history of this country. But yet, the Bureau of Statistics is telling us how it's well and good. So the question is that what metrics are they using to calculate the GDP? These are the issues we're asking. We know clearly that if you look at the market today and the cost of things, Nigerians are not buying at the way they used to buy in the past. So what are the drivers of the growth in the GDP? These are the issues on ground. Go to filling stations across the country. Today you see 1 or 2 staff just selling the filling station. Sometimes you don't even have products. I don't want to go into the issue of the statistics, but the statistics a reality that we all who go to the markets, who trade in the real time, we know what the issues are. So if the government is weighing out one statistics just for the sake that they are talking to the international community to make themselves feel good, Nigerians are actually at the receiving end of the policy failure, the policy refusal of the government to do the right thing. And that is what is basically creating all this insecurity and all these problems we see in this country. Today, you see more Nigerians wanting to leave the country. Why? An economy that is performing so well, where jobs are being created, where the economy is growing and people are running away. These are the issues on ground. So they cannot be weighing out statistics that are in contradiction of the reality within the economy.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that. Dr. Ejah, the public hearing is on, and I know that very soon it will be concluded. And do you see any divergent view or any different voice coming up to maybe put a stop or stall the process?
Different voice from who?
From what has been ongoing for the past couple of days.
The public hearing. You already have the answer before even the public hearing. Who are making up the public hearing? People are supposed to go there free. Now you're taking it. This tax issue. See, the truth is that any person representing a constituent, you engage with the people. Everybody cannot go to the National Assembly. So we entrust you as our chief servant and messenger. Before we even have the public hearing, we're talking about how much of it has been discussed by the senators at their various constituents. In their constituencies, they have not discussed it. So you're saying that everybody, you and I going to Abuja, how much are you paying into Abuja? You go to Abuja, you know that you're not going. It's a journey that if you have a business for 1 day, you're going to spend 2 days in terms of accommodation. So truly speaking, this is just to fulfill all righteousness. So it'd be on record that they had a public hearing. But I guarantee you that the outcome, the inputs from the public hearing, that is not speaking to where they want. That is speaking the mind of a greater percentage of Nigerians. We're not going there. But I clearly say that I think this act, we must interrogate it at every level and follow it. It's time for us to begin to question our representatives, to return back home. And let's begin to discuss on this.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ejah. Thank you, Richard Inoyo, very much for making our time to speak to us this morning. Reading the book, the autobiography of IBB, when he was talking about the SAP, the Structural Adjustment Program that he introduced, he said something that before that initiative was introduced, there was deliberation across Nigeria, and every nook and cranny of the country had a copy of that to deliberate. Even market women deliberated, and they all gave their input before the national
I agree
government.
There was massive deliberation, but it wasn't the decision of Nigerians that was implemented.
Okay.
Because Nigerians didn't want this.
What I'm driving at is, if the National Assembly is saying that they're having public hearing, yet a greater percentage of Nigerians are not even aware or even part of the public hearing, can't they just go back and adopt that particular move?
I understand
where I was driving
at. That move whatever the outcome was massive enough to get every person. People had a feel of it, and that's what representation ought to be. That's what it ought to be. You see them come here, immediately they win elections, they pack and become natives of Abuja. They don't come back until Christmas. They come in and spend 2, 3, 4 days, and the next time you see them again is in the election cycle. And that's what I'm saying with that. That's not it. That's not it.
All right, thank you very much again, and thank you for your calls this morning, for being part of the show. And this is where we draw the curtain. Sydney.
Yeah, we just want to appreciate both of our guests for sharing their insight into this. Hopefully, the Senate and those in the National Assembly are listening, and not just listening, but ensuring they do the biddings of Nigerians who sent them there in the first place.
Because one day they will come back to become ordinary Nigerians.
Yes. And then they will send us there.
All right, Ukamaka Richard Bassi is my name. God bless.
God bless you.
Number one. Music, sports, and talk radio. Let it hit on.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Sparkling 92.3 FM.